have you got a guitar? I said, absolutely not. And he said, okay, can we get, just in case someone asks the question. And so I said to him before, we're not doing this, are we? And he said, no, it's only if someone says, asked him if he played the spoons, and then they would come up with guitar. It sounded to me a bit like somebody knew there was a guitar. When they said, oh, something about the spoons, do you play, have you got an instrument? I felt like, oh, this is a bit of a setup. Because I said to Sylvester, we had not practiced anything. I said, this is going to be rubbish, so we can't say, okay, we're now going to give you a performance with spoons and guitar, because we have not rehearsed it. So it was kind of halfway between being planned and being unplanned. The possibility was there, but I thought we might get through it without someone saying, can you play the spoons?
Except I think they might have had somebody in the question line
That's what I'm saying.
set up in order to make sure that would happen.
Set up. That's why when the question came out, I looked at Sylvester like, what?
So several years ago you did that sketch with David where you reprised your role. And what was that?
The time crash.
Yeah. What was that like going back to the role?
Oh, it's brilliant. I mean, it wasn't like coming home, because it was not my set. It was very much David's set. It wasn't where we used to film it. We were at Television Centre. They were down in Cardiff. We were on a set that was wheeled in and wheeled out, and very brightly lit, and they were on this fantastic, what they call a standing set. But certainly it was great to be there, and it was great, as I said, to link the two, and it was a brilliant script. That's the main thing. Stephen Moffat had written this great little script that worked on two levels. One of David, remember watching me, but also on the 10th Doctor, remembering being the 5th Doctor. So it was, I loved it. By the time we finished it, I was really into it. But then sadly I had to go back to London.
Was it like putting on an old glove, putting on the costume?
It was, yes, maybe your glove didn't quite fit. An OJ glove.
An OJ glove.
But it was fun. It was great to do it.
So you've done a lot of conventions here, over there, probably other places in the world. What do you see as being some of the differences between American fans, British fans elsewhere in Australia or whatever?
It's a bit more flesh on show in America, actually, I would say.
But just in terms of...
People are at home in their bodies.
Okay.
What are the differences? Not huge. I think probably you're more effusive over here. I mean, I think the British fans will probably mean the same thing, but not say it in quite a, they won't. I don't think any British fan has ever come up and said you're awesome. Sadly, why not? But they are still huge fans, but we're a little more repressed in Britain, aren't we? So in many ways, it's nice to come here, because it's just. I love the fact that in America, what always struck me is that the whole community, whether it's sci-fi, which is probably common to sci-fi, but certainly in the Who community, it's so inclusive of every possible, conceivable form of life that exists, and with no kind of, oh God, they're a bit weird, they're a bit odd. It's just everyone is. I did one convention, I remember, sitting in the front row doing a panel, and there was a dominatrix sitting in the front row with somebody on a lead, and nobody turned a hair. Nobody turned a hair. It was just like this most common thing in the world. Welcome. So I love that about them. And I think that's very often the attraction. I thought, of course, all of you will be excluded from this. That one of the Doctor Who often attracts people who have interaction problems. But what they find in Doctor Who and fandom is a marvelous inclusiveness, which they don't probably get in the outside world. So some people are so nervous they can't speak. And it's great to see that there's such a community.
With having that kind of impact on fans, which is obvious here, what's the most touching fan moment that you've experienced?
Most touching fan moment?
Yeah, like a moment where it's just really, touched you.
Well, there's a woman came up to me today, and I didn't quite know what to do really, but she started to tell me how important Doctor Who was to her, and she started to cry. And I can't say what it was that was so touching, but it is immense. And you have a responsibility which you feel, which far exceeds your kind of, I don't feel like I'm going to be so important to these people. You're just an actor doing a job. But in the process of this woman had been so affected by, watching the program and seeing it for the first time, and remember sitting there with, I think, her grandfather, and she got really, it obviously meant an enormous amount to her. I felt a little inadequate, actually, to be honest with you, but it was immensely touching. And when people do that, you are, because there's something about the character which does mean an awful lot to people. And when it's people who've had a tough time, that's when it's really, really is touching, whether they've lost someone or whether they, feel lonely or isolated or whatever, and they found a kind of glimmer of hope and help through watching Doctor Who. I don't take credit for it, do you know what I mean? I'm just saying that it is immensely touching. I don't feel I deserve it. I don't feel like I deserve to be standing there telling me how important it was and to be crying, but it's still immensely touching.
You were mentioning earlier that you wish that your scripts were a little bit better, and the special effects maybe didn't involve pantomime sea monsters.
Well, that was the special effects, to be fair, was the best we could do at the time.
Absolutely.
The way special effects have moved on by the time the series came back, you could do. We had no computers. We couldn't. We had to print everything out on Electroset and then just film it.
Did you feel more free though, like with the Big Finish audio productions? Because we can imagine something.
Yeah. Well, as Colin Baker always says, the best scenery is on radio.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's perfectly true. You can do enormous things. I enjoy doing the Big Finish shows a lot.
Okay.
Because you can just do virtually anything. They usually do it afterwards, so it's fun to listen back. Mm-hmm. They always say to you, "We're going to put that special effect on afterwards." Just imagine that.
If you're able to work in another sci-fi program, what program would that be? Which one would you choose?
Of the ones that are on now?
Yeah, all the ones that are on now.
Right. That's a very good question. What would it be? And I was a huge fan of Battlestar Galactica when it came back. I don't know if it's that one that's on now that I really love. I think some of them have enormous potential. I started watching Under the Dome, and then I got lost. I lost after about 3 episodes. It seemed to be to go off a bit.
Yeah.
I like Falling Skies. What worries me a bit about these things is I always see the producers sitting in the back room going, "How can I drag this out for 7 years?"
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Which is slightly worrying because nothing is going to happen. And that was what I loved about Battlestar Galactica, is they said, "We are going to end this. We're going to finish this, and we're going to give you an ending, no matter what." So it wasn't going to be cancelled. And it was actually not going to be having to sit there for 7 years until they find, Earth.
Earth, yeah.
Okay.
Bummer.
Make it good.
Do you ever use the doctor card to get in or out of things?
Oh, you mean the psychic notepaper? Do you mean?
No, I meant like, I'm the doctor, let me in, or I'm the doctor, I would not like
Get
a
a dinner
traffic.
reservation.
Oh, I see what you mean. You can certainly do that to a certain extent. It has its advantages and disadvantages, really. But certainly when, sometimes you can just... I find it's always best if you say to people, "I know you can't do this, but so I won't, there's no point in asking you, but if anything happens, can you get us a table here?" And then they'll 5 minutes later they'll come back and go, "Oh, I found you a table." But if you come in and say, "I'm the doctor, please find me a table," they'll just basically say, "Sod off." So I find it quite better. I shouldn't be saying this on video. You set them a challenge and they usually come up with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.